Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. I'm Christine, and today's project I have been so looking forward to all week. Some of you know I work as a marketing consultant also on the side, and I have been working with a new client, and I have had way less time than I'm used to. During the week, it's been really hard to have time to sew. So it's Saturday, and I'm so excited to finally dive into this project. I thought I'd take you along with me. So first, I've officially moved my sewing machine and my sewing area into my living room because it is so hot out, and this is the only room in my apartment that I have air conditioning. So I figured I would do my sewing in the air conditioning, and then I would leave the iron in my sewing room, and that way that can get as hot as it wants to, but I'll be cool at least as I'm sewing here in the living room. So today's project started with this navy blue cotton lawn that I ordered from Minerva. This is the same cotton lawn that I used in my smocked white top, if you remember that from a few weeks ago. I really, really love this fabric, and I decided to order it again this is actually in the navy. So I've already pre-washed the fabric. It does come with quite a bit of sizing or like structure to it. And so I find that giving it a good pre-wash really softens it up, and now I am ready to sew with it. So what I have in mind, I'm so excited about. So I am going to try shirring. Shirring has definitely been having its moment in the last few years. I've been intrigued by it. I've even bought the elastic thread, but I never have attempted a project, but now is the time. I have done a little test here just to see how this fabric would behave with the shirring and also the pattern that I'm going to do. So you can see I haven't done the shirring all right next to each other. I've done 2 lines here, and then I've skipped a bit, and then I've done another 2 lines. So that is the pattern I'm gonna follow. And for the actual pattern that I'm going to use I'm going to make a dress. I'm going to be using my bond dress pattern, which is a 1-shoulder dress that is supposed to be fitted, and it's actually for stretch knits only, the body is. So I'm going to attempt to use a woven with the shirring for this part. I think I'm going to take it right to like the waistline. And then hopefully this bottom part will then be gathered. The bodice will be in this shirring. I'll do the shirring like all the way up the 1 shoulder. And then the bottom will be gathered like this. And then I'm going to do the view with the puffed sleeve. So then I'll have 1 puffed sleeve, which I think is going to be so cute. So how I'm going to approach this project is I'm going to be cutting 1 large, I guess it'll be a rectangle. Decided since this fabric is about 54 inches wide, I'm just going to use the entire width of the fabric. So it's going to be about 54 inches wide. And then for the length, I'm going to be very generous with the length. I think I want this dress to probably fall around my ankle, maybe my mid-calf, I don't know, maybe my knee. So I'm just going to go with a long length. I think I'll probably cut it about 60 inches just to make sure I have enough to go from my shoulder all the way down for as long as I want it with a bit of a hem. And I definitely have enough fabric to, play with a couple inches on the hem. So I'm going to be cutting 1 large rectangle, 54 by about 60 inches, and I'll be shirring all the way across the top of one of the pieces from about my shoulder to about where my waistline would be, and that's going to be where I'll cut my shirred panels from. And then I'll just sew this up like a normal dress. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Let's see if it turns out. I'm a little nervous about the shirring just because I've never done it before, and the fact that I am using a dress pattern that's designed for knits, I'm pretty sure that this is going to give me enough stretch that I'll be able to get it over my head and all of that. And I'm actually not concerned about it staying up because I do have the shoulder seam and the sleeve. So pretty sure this is going to work, but let's see. So I'm going to get started by cutting out my large rectangle. I'll probably press this fabric just a bit as it has some washing wrinkles. So I'll give it a press, and then I'll jump into the shirring. I have my large rectangle of fabric already cut and pressed. And now to get started with the shirring, I think what I'm going to do is go through and mark my lines with some white chalk, just because once I'm in the middle of the shirring, I'm not going to be able to have any guide. And because I'm not doing the lines of shirring right next to each other, I want to do the break in the middle. I need to mark in these lines. So I've done a little bit of calculation, and I like the way the two lines that I do are about a 1/4 inch apart. So I definitely want, you can see from the back, they're just about a 1/4 inch there. And then the distance in the middle, I kind of tried a couple, I started at just about an inch and then I went a little wider. And I think I'm going to stick with the inch part, just because it's a little closer together, and I think the gathers maybe just a little bit neater. So I am going to be marking my lines 1.5 inches apart. So then what I'll do is just have the one line 1.5 inches, and I'll do a 1/4 inch on either side of the line, and that will give me my shirring pattern that I'm looking for. So this is going to take a little bit of time to mark, just because I have to mark the entire width of my fabric, but I think it's going to be well worth taking the time to do so, just so I can get really straight, even shirring lines. So I have my fabric all marked out. I did just enough width to take me to my natural waistline. So shoulder to waistline, I did my marking. So now I just need to wind my bobbin. I already have one bobbin wound, but I'm going to wind another one. So I bought this elastic thread. It was surprisingly really easy to find. My fabric store had white, they had black, they had red, they had gray, so lots of colors, and it was fairly inexpensive. It was euro 30 cents for each spool, so it wasn't even that expensive, so that was nice. And it's super stretchy. So I just have a bobbin here that I've started, and I've never shirred before, so I definitely was perusing around some different YouTube videos, and it seems like you just kind of wind the bobbin, not stretching the elastic, but also not letting it go loosey-goosey. So I'm just going to continue on. I'm kind of just holding it, not stretching, but just kind of holding it taut and wrapping it around. And this is exactly what I did with the bobbin that I have in my machine now that I did my sample with. And I'm happy with the way with the tension. So I think that's what I'm going to do with this one. So once I have my bobbin wound, I'm going to set my machine for a 4.0 straight stitch. So that's actually the longest stitch possible on my machine. I'm going to sew lines of stitching just like normal. It's kind of easy. I don't know why shirring was so intimidating to me before, but so from what I've heard around the internet, I'm definitely going to want to backstitch at every start and stop that I do, just so the elastic doesn't come undone. And I think that when I go to actually cut out my one shoulder from this fabric that I'm making, I think I'm actually going to need to do some stay stitching along my cutting line, just to also secure the elastic. So I'm kind of trying to think ahead of what I'm going to do. But for now, I've got a lot of stitching to do. So I'm going to continue winding my bobbin and then get these rows of stitching done. And then I'll be ready to cut out my dress. So I finished all of my shirring rows. I love the way it looks. I'm not quite sure why I have some parts here in this section that are looser than some of the others around the bottom. I think it may have something to do with the tension of my bobbin, but it's actually okay, because where it is just a little bit fuller is actually corresponds with where my bust line is, so I'm not too worried about it. The biggest thing that I ran into was this piece is about 54 inches wide, which is 1.5 times my total bust measurement. And the fabric, so this piece of fabric was supposed to be my front and my back with the shirring, but wow, it barely fits the front of my bodice. So I'm gonna need to make a whole other one of these panels for the back. So I wasn't exactly planning on having to do that, but it's definitely necessary. This did take quite a while, and for each bobbin, I was able to do 3 rows. So I've already gone ahead and marked out my pattern. You can see the chalk lines. This is going to be the front. So you can see I have the neckline there, the shoulder, and my armhole. So I thought what I would do is just take my machine and I'm going to stay stitch along, just basically sew with a really short stitch length. I'll probably sew maybe with a 2 stitch length all along this chalk line. And why I'm going to do this is because the elastic is actually so the elastic is in the bobbin, and then the top thread is my normal thread. And the top thread actually kind of creates almost like a gathering with the elastic, with the bobbin. So this is actually movable. It's so cool. I never would have known. And so I need to secure the elastic, because if I just were to cut along here, all my elastic would come loose and I would have a flat fabric again. So I'm going to be really careful to make sure that I secure the ends of my elastic before I cut out my garment. So I'm going to do that and then regroup and do a whole other panel, and then I'll be ready to sew up this dress. But so far, I'm just absolutely loving the way it's gonna look. I think once it's like fitted on my body, it will kind of smooth out. I'm just loving the way it looks. And this fabric, the blue, is such a pretty color. So overall, really happy with how it's going.
Just a few more hours, you'll be on your way, like dancing on a wire. Oh, how I try to make you stay. Won't you stay? Won't you stay? Or won't you stay? Won't you stay?
Okay, so it's the next day. I've finished putting in the sleeve and the side seams, and I've started to play a little bit with the hem based on which shoe I would wear. I definitely want this to be more of a casual dress. I don't want it to be a dress that feels like special occasion. I want to be able to wear this to go grocery shopping or to coffee. Like, I really don't want it to have like that too special of a feel. I think I kind of wish that I could have it a little shorter, but when I make it a little shorter, it kind of hits right at that point of my calf that, I mean, it just isn't like it's like a little bit of a wider part. So I think just right there is kind of where I like it. I don't know. What do you think? So as I've just been wearing this for the last maybe like 10 minutes or so, I've noticed this side, I kind of want to do this with it, and that's going to really annoy me. And so I want to add some kind of support along the neckline. So what I think I'm going to do, I still need to finish the neckline. It's just been stay stitched, so it is nice and secure, the elastic is, but it's so lightweight, so I think it just needs a little bit of support up here. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is cut some wider bias strips and do right sides together, and then thread this 1/2 inch elastic through the casing. I do think I'm going to have to hand sew the casing down because I don't want the stitching to show through my shirring. And so I think I'll just hand stitch my bias tape down and then gently feed this elastic through. And that way it'll have just a little bit of support around the top to really help kind of keep it firm. The back also, I noticed, it's kind of hard to show, but right here it gaps just ever so slightly. So I do think the elastic will help just really kind of bring it in and give it the stability that it needs. The other thing that I'm considering doing is adding another couple lines of shirring down the bodice. So you can see it's hitting pretty high up, and I think I'd like it to be just a bit more dropped, just to kind of add to the casualness of it. I think when it's empire, it kind of gives a little bit more of that dressy look. And so I think if I bring the shirring down maybe 1 or 2 rows, I think it's going to help it feel a little bit more casual. And also it does feel a little bit maternity dress. So I think kind of bringing it down will also just help bring down some of the volume. So overall, I'm loving the way this is going. So I'm going to work on the neckband and the hem and maybe adding another line of shirring, and then I'll show you the end results.